Welcome to the writer reads The Strays of Lunar One, Book 1, The Unwilling, Chapter 13, Orientation. It took a week for Lewis to understand what it meant to be beta, and a week for Oliver to begin to see the ramifications of what he'd done. If his friend was ever to return to Lunar One, he would need an introduction to the pack and a shepherd. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, he promised Lewis when the two sat down to discuss the matter. If your girl is prepared to still have you, I'll work to cover the cost. It is my harm and my debt to pay. Your word is an alpha? Lewis asked, and Oliver nodded. My word is your alpha and your friend. Lewis did not reply to that, and Oliver was grateful not to have to dispute it. He might have saved Lewis's life, but how much of a friend he'd been was still in question, at least by Lewis. Perhaps a stint with the lupar would help him accept it. Perhaps him not being able to return immediately to Amy's ever-loving arms was not as bad as it seemed. He returned from an evening's training to discover Harper and the angry man waiting on the other side of the airlock. This is why I wanted my own security measures on the door, he thought, but didn't say. What can I do for you? He asked, keeping his voice as civil as possible instead. The angry man raised a dark eyebrow and indicated the pod and then the airlock. We dock in 36 hours. I need you and the pup back in your pods tonight. Oliver paused. Now? The man nodded. Care to tell me why? The sector's known for surprise inspections, and there's a warrant and several bounties out for one Oliver Landstrom and a Lewis Havisham. Some have one name, others bear two. Either way, the price on any of them is high enough to sway the most honest official. We need to sanitize these compartments before we're boarded. Oliver bowed his head and huffed out a sigh. I'll get the cub in his box, he agreed, turning around, pausing as the faint tones of a voice reached his ears. He glanced back in time to see the angry man cock his head. Oliver didn't catch the words, but he heard the creak of harness and the clink of a weapon being cocked. It's too late for that, the man said, and fired. But, Oliver began as the dart buried itself in his lower back. Well, he'd give the guy this, he knew his business. The pain was short-lived, and the drug rolled through his system like a jackhammer. There was something to be said for a nanite-assisted delivery, even if this was going to make Lewis's next waking problematic. He hit the floor, his limbs like jelly. I'll get the cub, the man said. Get Black to help you load this one into the pod. I need the place sanitized in the next 3 minutes. Understood, sir. At least they're not going to sanitize me as well, Oliver thought as darkness overcame him. When he woke again, the pod stood open, and the smell of loam, freshly cut grass, and growing things filled his nostrils. For a long moment, Oliver lay still and let his senses adjust. His stomach rolled with nausea, and he couldn't recall ever having that reaction to stasis before, except for when he remembered the sharp pain of the dart punching into his back and groaned. They'd been boarded, and the angry man, Captain, his brain supplied, and Oliver felt his shirt pockets, finding the comm chip he'd been hoping for. At least the man had sent an explanation. Moving slowly, Oliver swung out of the pod and looked around. He was in what appeared to be an empty garden shed. Metal walled and concrete floored, it stood empty except for the other pod standing against the opposite wall. Lewis. Oliver hurried over, relieved to discover the changeling's pod hadn't been activated, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Now he just had to decide what was best. Did he let the boy out and hope he'd be reasonable, or did he try and find answers to the questions the cub was sure to be asking? In the end, he woke Lewis up, if only to make sure the changeling was all right after being tranked prior to stasis. What happened? Lewis asked. I was almost asleep when I caught a new scent, but I was... He frowned, trying to work out what happened. You were tranked and stuffed into your pod so they could sanitize our quarters prior to being boarded, Oliver told him. He held up the chip. There's an explanation. It had better be a good one, Lewis grumbled. I don't feel so great. And nor would he, Oliver thought, if the way I'm feeling is any indication. I hear you, bro, he said, and almost regretted it, but Lewis didn't reprimand him, and Oliver activated the chip. Mr. Carlyle, the angry man's hologram stated. It angled slightly as though taking in a second person. And Mr. Creek. Lewis's eyebrows rose, and he pointed at himself, raising his eyes in question. Oliver nodded, not speaking as the angry man continued. I hope this finds you not too worse for wear. I won't apologize for doing what was necessary to keep my ship safe, so understand our actions were necessary, as was the double translocation you have undergone. The first from the ship to your initial destination, the second to a more remote and less well appointed location. You will appreciate your continued freedoms more, given the prices on your heads. Lewis exchanged glances with Oliver, and the Alpha read the man's thought that capture by the Justiciars might not be a bad thing, for him at least. The angry man continued. Thus far, you have one bounty issued from Xanol Blue, covering the capture of both of you. Mr. Landstrom's bounty stands at 500,000 credits alive and 250,000 credits dead, and Mr. Havisham's bounty stands at 1,500,000 credits alive and 250,000 credits dead. That increases to 500,000 if the implant is still viable on arrival. Lewis staggered back, and Oliver grabbed him before he fell. But, his friend began, and Oliver hushed him. An additional bounty has been issued by Ravelin X, your ex-client, Florey tells me. They will double Xenol's bounty, but only if you are delivered alive and your survival is viable. Trust me, that second bounty was tempting even for me. You will want to stay off the radar. Oliver sank to his haunches, pulling Lewis down with him. The hologram fixed them with a stern look. By now, I'm sure you understand the gravity of your situation. You have earned the ire of two powerful companies, and there are very few places you will find refuge. Fortunately, I believe you have the ability to alter your human appearances, and neither bounty mentions Mr. Havisham's wolf affiliations. Oliver breathed a sigh of relief, but the angry man had not finished. There is only one piece of good news, and that is that the Justiciars appear to be oblivious to Mr. Landstrom's transgression of Lunar Wolf law, and his wolf identity does not match his current colouring. Oliver wondered how he could be aware of that, and decided the cabins had been better monitored than he'd realized. He startled as Lewis rested a heavy hand on his shoulder. We gave them the data, he whispered. You promised. And Florey confirmed the delivery, Oliver assured him, pausing the hologram. I'm guessing Ravelin X is mad at me. This is your fault? Lewis's whisper was a strangled shout. Oliver shook his head, gripping Lewis's shoulders. No, this is what happens when we fuck with a company like Xanol Blue. But the second bounty? Oliver hung his head. I don't know. He held up a hand when Lewis opened his mouth to protest. It could have been because I took you from the firefight because Ravelin were going to let you die and didn't care as long as your implant remained viable. Lewis's jaw dropped, and Oliver continued. Or it could be because they'd have made the offer anyway as an extension of the contract, but I'm not going to turn myself in to find out. Now, if you... Lewis shook his head. They'd have let me die? Oliver nodded. Their exact words were, just get him out of there, we'll tank him when we get back to base. And when I told them you weren't going to last that long, they said, his implant will. Lewis stared at him. How did you know I wasn't going to last for that long? He asked, and Oliver sighed. Here, he said, and sent Lewis the visuals of what he'd seen when he'd gotten to his friend. Oh, fuck. Lewis's voice caught, and he sounded faintly sick. They fucked me up good. Xanol shot you, Oliver told him. Yeah, but... Lewis gestured weakly as though indicating the images Oliver had shown him. Yeah, Oliver told him. I tried to get you to Doc Nielsen's, but you were almost gone by the time I hit the edge of the Lunar One shuttle field, and I couldn't wake you. So you bit me, Lewis said, his voice flat. Would you rather I'd let you... Oliver began and stood up, moving away. Forget I asked that. You've already made it clear. I'm sorry, man. He wanted to add that he was still glad Lewis was around, even if he'd lost his friendship, but that would defeat the purpose of his apology. The soft brush of movement reached him and he turned. Lewis gripped his bicep. We'll sort it, his friend told him, and indicated the message chip Oliver still held. You going to listen to whatever else he has to say? Oliver sighed. Sure. and he rested his hand in the hollow on top of the pod, leaning on the container as though it was any kind of support for the free fall he was in internally. My advice is to head on up to the farmhouse in Human Guise and hire on as farmhands for a couple of days. It's not a picking season, but they might have repairs or odd jobs that need doing. And if they don't, you should have enough credits in your Carlisle and Creek accounts to secure a couple of nights in the barn. Lewis snorted softly. The deal is they keep the pods for pickup, so don't go selling those. I need them. He paused. My advice, if you want it, is to stay planetside for a couple of weeks and then ship out. Let the bounties go stale before you risk a bioscan you don't know is happening. I don't know what your plans are, but I can guess. Next port that will get you anywhere close is Capston's Rigger. It's a mining colony, and you might be able to hire onto a freighter headed that way. And good luck. You're going to need it. The hologram vanished, and the chip fizzed, sparked, and exploded in on itself. Oliver barely suppressed his yelp of surprise and pain, and the two friends exchanged glances. So, Lewis stated, indicating the door, you want to see what's out there? Oliver cocked his head and studied the man. Here's a test for your control, he said. I need you to put on a bit of weight and lose a couple of inches, and maybe lighten your skin. Huh, I suppose you'd also like me to change the colour of my hair and eyes while I'm at it, Lewis asked sarcastically. And Oliver connected to the planetary info web, surprised to find no account was required. Keeping a wary eye out for monitoring programs, he accessed the public notice board and pulled the bounty files, the ones holding a picture of them. As soon as they'd downloaded, he copied the image off Lewis's and processed it in the image manipulator. This, he said, although if you can do half of it and manage to hold it for more than 30 seconds at a time, I'll be impressed.